Horror movies love twisted punishments, but some are so disturbing they'll haunt you for life. So today, after analyzing hundreds of horror films, I'm ranking the 20 worst punishments in horror films, from pure torture to incredibly evil mind games. Plus, there's one punishment nobody thinks is twisted, but it secretly is. But first, let's look at this dark social experiment, the platform. What happens when society's rules disappear overnight? Goring thought he knew the answer until he experienced the ultimate social experiment gone wrong. The platform seems straightforward, a vertical prison where food descends daily on a platform. Stay on higher floors, feast like royalty, drop to lower levels, fight for scraps. Goreng's cellmate Trimagasi explains the system with casual familiarity, like he's giving a prison tour. Level 48 feels manageable. There's plenty of food, a seemingly reasonable cellmate, and you only have to endure it for a few months. But those warning signs keep multiplying. Trimagasi's nervous energy when discussing the depths, that coiled rope in the corner. The way conversations always return to hunger and survival. Then the monthly shuffle hits. Level 171. The platform arrives picked clean, nothing but crumbs and desperation. And that's when Trimagasi reveals the platform's real lesson. Civilization is exactly 3 missed meals thick. What makes this punishment twisted isn't the physical horror that follows. It's the realization that Goreng becomes everything he despised about the system. The man who entered believing in human dignity exits as living proof that anyone can break. But at least Goreng knew what he was signing up for. Our next victim thought she'd found true love. Fresh. Noah met Brendan at a grocery store and thought she'd finally found a decent guy. He's charming, funny, and actually seems interested in more than just hooking up. After weeks of great dates, he invites her for a romantic weekend getaway to his beautiful house in the countryside. Everything was perfect when they arrived at his stunning modern house. It was the dream date for Noah. But mind you, the warning signs are not easy to miss. The house is way too isolated. There are no neighbors for miles, and that locked door in the basement he casually mentions is just storage. And yeah, the wine is making her drowsier than usual, but she trusts him completely, so what's there to bother? Suddenly, she wakes up chained to a wall in his basement, and everything went downhill. Noah discovers she's in Brendan's human butcher shop, complete with hanging meat hooks and surgical tools. He explains his business casually. He sells premium human meat to wealthy clients who pay top dollar for specific cuts. He keeps the women alive as long as possible, harvesting parts piece by piece. Noah watches in horror as he removes chunks from other prisoners, seasoning and preparing them like gourmet cuts. When he approached her with his surgical saw, she had a bright idea. She pretends to be attracted to him. As he leans in for a kiss, she bites down on his private parts with everything she has, tearing through skin and muscle until he screams and collapses. She spits out the bloody mess and helps the other prisoners beat him to death with his own tools. Poor Brendan should have known better than to get that close. Speaking of getting too close to the wrong people, Red's girlfriend made that mistake too, Mandy. Sometimes the punishment isn't about what you did, it's about who you refuse to become. Mandy lives isolated in a forest cabin with her boyfriend Red, spending days reading and creating art. She's found peace away from the world's chaos, but peace attracts predators. When cult leader Jeremiah Sand spots Mandy, her independence becomes his obsession. The children of the New Dawn believe they can possess anything beautiful, and Mandy's rejection only fuels their twisted sense of destiny. Here's where most people would panic or try to reason with fanatics. Not Mandy. She laughs in Jeremiah's face. Jeremiah took that personally, and that's exactly what signed her death warrant. The cult's punishment isn't just murder, it's the complete destruction of everything pure in Red's world while he's forced to watch. They don't just take Mandy's life, they burn away Red's sanity. What makes this twisted isn't the method, it's that the cult succeeds completely. Red becomes the very monster they created, hunting them with supernatural fury until nothing remains but vengeance and madness. What the helly? But insane religious people seem almost reasonable compared to what happens when someone plays God with human life. Saw. Adam is a photographer who makes ends meet by taking stalker photos for suspicious clients. Dr. Lawrence Gordon is a successful surgeon with a wife and daughter, living a comfortable upper-class life. Neither of them expects to wake up chained to pipes in a disgusting bathroom with a corpse between them. But Jigsaw has very specific plans for both men. Everything seems solvable at first, like an escape room at an arcade. There are clues, hacksaws, and what appears to be a way out if they can just figure out the puzzle. Lawrence finds a tape recorder that explains the rules calmly. The hacksaws are deliberately too dull to cut through the chains, the corpse is positioned strategically, and that phone keeps ringing with increasingly desperate calls from Lawrence's family. And yeah, the fact that there's a loaded gun in the room, definitely isn't good news. Suddenly, Lawrence's family gets kidnapped by Jigsaw's accomplice, and everything goes wrong. The killer gives Lawrence until 6 o'clock to kill Adam or watch his wife and daughter die. As the deadline approaches, Lawrence realizes the hacksaws aren't meant for the chains at all. They're meant for cutting through bone and flesh. He positions the saw against his ankle and begins cutting through his own foot, screaming in agony as blood pours across the bathroom floor. The bones crack and tendons snap as he saws back and forth, his face contorted in absolute pain. When he finally cuts completely through, he crawls across the floor, leaving a trail of blood, grabs the gun, and shoots Adam in the shoulder. Lawrence drags himself out to find help, but Adam is left chained and bleeding as the lights go out and the door slams shut. And just like that, Adam learned what Jigsaw really wanted. Meanwhile, the Firefly family was dealing with their own twisted situation, the Devil's Rejects. The Firefly family consists of Baby, Otis, and Captain Spaulding. They are 3 psychotic killers who've been torturing and murdering people for years. When Sheriff Weidel's brother gets killed during a raid on their compound, the surviving family members go on the run, leaving a trail of bodies behind them. They think they can outrun the law and keep doing what they love most. But they are wrong. The table turns when they take a motel room and capture a traveling family to torture for fun. Baby and Otis are in their element, playing twisted games with their victims while Spaulding handles the logistics. The thing is, Sheriff Weidel is tracking them all this time. He's recruited local psychopaths like the Unholy Two, and his methods are becoming just as brutal as theirs. And yeah, the fact that he's carrying torture tools probably should have worried them. Suddenly, Sheriff Weidel captures them in the motel, and everything goes wrong. Weidel has gone completely insane with revenge, and he subjects the family to the same tortures they inflicted on others. He nails Otis to a chair and starts zapping him with a cattle prod while playing gospel music. Baby gets tied up and terrorized with the same psychological games she used on her victims. The sheriff brings in the Unholy Two to help with the torture, and they take turns beating and burning the family members. When the Firefly family finally escapes, they're battered and broken, driving toward a police roadblock in a stolen car. Rather than surrender, they grab their guns and charge into a hail of bullets, dying in gunfire. Poor Sheriff Weidel, he became the very thing he was hunting. But speaking of becoming monsters, let's talk about what Leatherface's family did to their victims. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Sally, Franklin, Kirk, Pam, and Jerry are just college kids driving through rural Texas to visit an old family property. They seem like typical young people, making jokes, planning their weekend, and not taking the locals' warnings seriously. When they encounter the isolated Sawyer family homestead, they think they're just asking for help with gas. Everything seems quiet when Kirk approaches the farmhouse looking for fuel. The property looks abandoned, just some old furniture and animal bones scattered around. The red flags are everywhere though. The house reeks of death, there are human skulls decorating the porch, and strange noises keep coming from inside. But they just ignore all of it. And yeah, the fact that there's a chainsaw revving up in the background definitely isn't normal. Suddenly, Leatherface appears in the doorway with his chainsaw roaring, and everything goes wrong. He slams a hammer into Kirk's skull, killing him instantly before dragging the body inside. When Pam comes looking for Kirk, Leatherface grabs her and impales her on a meat hook, leaving her hanging alive in the basement while he fires up his chainsaw. Jerry arrives next and gets the same hammer treatment, while Franklin gets chainsawed through his wheelchair, and Sally runs through the woods with Leatherface chasing her, his chainsaw roaring behind her as tree branches tear at her clothes. She finally reaches the dinner table scene where the family forces her to watch them torture and prepare her friends for their cannibal feast. Talk about a family dinner from hell. If you're still watching, hit that subscribe button because it gets way worse. Unfortunately for these next characters, their punishment was just beginning. Martyrs. Anna and Lucy are childhood friends reunited after years of separation. Lucy has spent her adult life hunting the people who tortured her as a child, believing she's found justice when she massacres a seemingly innocent family. Anna tries to help her friend heal, but discovers that Lucy's quest for revenge has led them both into something far more sinister. Everything seems resolved when Lucy kills the family she believes tortured her. Anna helps clean up the mess, thinking they can finally move forward with their lives. But things get even darker. There are hidden rooms in the house, medical equipment, and documentation about something called transcendence. And Lucy keeps seeing a mutilated woman ghost. Probably should have been concerning. Suddenly, the real cult members arrive at the house and everything goes wrong. Anna discovers that the family was part of a religious organization that tortures people to the brink of death, believing they can witness what lies beyond. They capture Anna and begin systematically breaking her down through months of psychological and physical torture. She's beaten, starved, and subjected to increasingly brutal punishments designed to push her to the edge of death without killing her. What's even worse is when they chain her up and begin flaying her alive, removing her skin piece piece by piece while keeping her conscious. The cult leader believes Anna has transcended human suffering and asks her what she saw beyond death, but Anna's whispered answer drives the woman to suicide. And just like that, Anna learned the true price of transcendence. Speaking of paying prices, American tourists learned an expensive lesson in Slovakia: hostel. Josh and Paxton are typical American college students backpacking through Europe, looking for parties and casual hookups. When they meet a mysterious man who tells them about a hostel in Slovakia where beautiful women are desperate for American men, they think they've hit the jackpot. The promise of easy sex and cheap alcohol makes the trip sound perfect. Everything seems amazing when they arrive in the Slovakian city. The hostel is modern and clean, and beautiful women immediately start flirting with them. They're living their college fantasy. The warning signs are subtle at first. The other tourists keep disappearing. Local workers act nervous around certain guests, and there are strange sounds coming from the basement. Then Josh wakes up strapped to a chair in a basement torture chamber and discovers that the hostel is actually a front for elite hunting, a business that sells torture experiences to wealthy psychopaths. Rich clients pay millions to torture and kill kidnapped tourists. Josh gets assigned to a German businessman who starts by drilling holes in his body, taking his time to maximize the pain. The man explains each torture tool carefully, describing how much damage each one will cause before using it. His Achilles tendons get sliced, preventing him from running. Meanwhile, Paxton discovers the operation and has to fight his way through multiple torture chambers, watching dozens of victims being slowly murdered by their wealthy torturers. Poor Josh should have read the hostel reviews more carefully. But if you thought that surgery was bad, wait until you hear about the Human Centipede sequel, The Human Centipede 2. Martin is a mentally disturbed man who works as a security guard and becomes obsessed with the first Human Centipede film. He watches it repeatedly, taking notes and planning to recreate the experiment with more victims. His plan is to capture 12 people and surgically connect them to form a longer centipede than in the original movie. Martin starts kidnapping his victims, a few tourists here, some locals there, keeping them drugged and docile in his warehouse. He has medical supplies and restraints. Unlike in the movie, Martin has no medical training. His supplies are improvised, and his methods are completely unsanitary. And yeah, the fact that he's basing surgery on a horror movie probably isn't ideal. And then Martin begins his surgical procedure, and everything goes wrong. Without anesthesia or proper tools, he starts connecting his victim's mouth to anus using a staple gun and duct tape. The victims scream in agony as he tears through flesh and muscle, creating crude connections between their digestive systems. His procedures ignore basic anatomy and sterility. Several victims even die from shock and blood loss during the procedure, but Martin continues working with their corpses. The surviving victims are forced to crawl as a connected chain, their faces buried in each other's waist as Martin watches his creation with satisfaction. When the makeshift surgery inevitably fails, the victims suffer slow deaths from infection and internal bleeding. Talk about a really bad movie review. Meanwhile, let's talk about what happened to a documentary crew trapped in the Amazon. Cannibal Holocaust. Professor Harold Monroe leads an anthropology team into the Amazon rainforest to investigate the disappearance of a documentary crew. The missing filmmakers, director Alan Yates, script girl Faye Daniels, and cameramen Jack Anders and Mark Tomaso went to document cannibal tribes and never returned. Monroe's rescue team finds their equipment and film canisters, but the footage reveals a horrifying truth. Everything seemed perfect when the documentary crew first arrived in the jungle. They had proper equipment, local guides, and a clear mission to capture authentic tribal life. They were making good progress filming various tribes and their customs, but things started to get worse as they pushed deeper into unexplored territory. Their guides kept warning them about dangerous tribes. They were running low on supplies, and their behavior toward the locals was becoming increasingly exploitative. And they even started burning down villages for dramatic effect, in which they probably crossed some lines. Because of that, the Yanomamo tribe captures the entire crew, and everything goes wrong. The recovered footage shows the tribe subjecting the filmmakers to ritualistic torture and cannibalism while their own cameras keep rolling. Alan gets impaled through his torso on a wooden spike, while the cannibals systematically dismember Jack and Mark, using stone tools to cut away flesh while they're still alive and conscious. They also force Faye to watch her colleagues being butchered and consumed before gang raping her repeatedly. Finally, they decapitate her with a machete, holding her severed head up to the camera as blood pours from her neck. The tribe then feasts on all four bodies, tearing flesh from bones with their teeth while the camera captures every gruesome detail. Poor Monroe wishes he'd never found that footage. Speaking of footage that should stay hidden, Let's talk about a twisted prom night. The loved ones. Brent is a high school student dealing with guilt over his father's death in a car accident. When the school dance approaches, he asks his girlfriend Holly to prom, but he also gets asked by Lola Stone, a quiet, weird girl whom he politely turns down. Brent thinks he's handled the situation well and can enjoy prom with his actual girlfriend, but everything changed when Brent was getting ready at home. Holly is excited about the dance, and Brent's mother is taking pictures like any typical prom night. And at school, Lola had been staring at him strangely, and his mother mentioned an unusual phone call earlier. He also feels dizzy after drinking water probably should have concerned him. Suddenly, Brent wakes up tied to a chair in Lola's dining room, and everything goes wrong. Lola has created her own twisted prom with help from her deranged father, complete with decorations made from previous victims' body parts. She's wearing a blood-stained prom dress and crown made of human teeth, dancing to music while Brent struggles against his restraints. Lola starts her torture by hammering nails into Brent's chest, creating a pattern while giggling about their special night together. Her father brings out a power drill, and they take turns boring holes into Brent's forehead, trying to lobotomize him like their other victims. When Brent won't cooperate with their twisted romance, they pour bleach into his wounds and threaten to throw him into a pit filled with previous prom dates who've been kept alive but brain damaged. Lola carves Brent plus Lola into his chest with a razor blade while describing their future together. Talk about a prom night to forget. But if you thought high school is bad, now let's talk about a family's domestication project. The Woman. Chris Cleek is a successful country lawyer living with his wife Belle and 3 children in rural Connecticut. While hunting in the woods, he discovers a feral woman living in a cave and becomes obsessed with the idea of capturing and civilizing her. He believes he can domesticate her like an animal and make her part of his family. Everything seems manageable when Chris first chains the woman in his storm cellar. He explains to his wife and children that they're going to help civilize this savage creature through patience and training. But little did they know that the woman is incredibly strong. She has survival instincts honed over years in the wilderness, and Chris's methods are becoming increasingly brutal. And the woman will never let that slide. Then came the day that the woman begins fighting back. Chris subjects her to systematic abuse designed to break her spirit. He hoses her down with freezing water, did not feed her until she obeys commands, and beats her when she shows defiance. His teenage son Brian begins sexually assaulting the woman while she's chained up, treating her like property rather than a human being. The family forces her to wear clothes and attempt civilized behavior, punishing her brutally when she reverts to her wild nature. Chris's methods become increasingly violent as the woman refuses to submit. When the woman finally breaks free during a family gathering, she hunts down each family member, using her survival skills to seek her revenge. Their domestication project didn't go according to plan, but speaking of domestics, let's talk about a family's occult destiny, Hereditary. Annie Graham is an artist struggling with her relationship with her recently deceased mother Ellen. She lives with her psychiatrist husband Steve and their 2 children, teenage Peter and 13-year-old Charlie, who has always been strange and antisocial. Annie thinks her mother's death might finally bring peace to their troubled family dynamic. Everything seems manageable after Ellen's funeral. The family is grieving but trying to move forward with their normal routines. Annie starts attending grief support groups and life appears to be stabilizing. The warning signs multiply quickly though. Charlie begins acting even more disturbed. Strange symbols appear around the house, and Annie discovers her mother was involved with occult practices. But everything went in shambles when Charlie died in a horrific car accident. Peter accidentally gives Charlie chocolate containing nuts, triggering a severe allergic reaction that causes her throat to close up. In a panic, he speeds toward the hospital while Charlie gasps for air in the back seat, sticking her head out the window to breathe. When he swerves to avoid a dead deer, Charlie's head gets torn off by a telephone pole, leaving Peter to drive home with his sister's decapitated corpse. The family spirals into grief and madness as supernatural forces manipulate their every move. Steve gets burned alive when Annie's possessed body throws lantern fuel on him, screaming as flames consume his flesh. Peter jumps from his bedroom window, cracking his skull open on the driveway, but survives long enough to crawl into the treehouse where cultists crown him as the vessel for the demon Paimon. Talk about a family legacy nobody wanted. But speaking of legacies nobody wanted, let's talk about a mother and son's psychological nightmare, the Babadook. Amelia is a widowed single mother struggling to raise her hyperactive 6-year-old son, Samuel, who has severe behavioral problems and an obsession with monsters. She works at a nursing home and barely sleeps due to Samuel's constant nightmares and violent outbursts. Everything seems manageable when Samuel finds a mysterious children's book called Mr. Babadook. Amelia reads him the book as a bedtime story, thinking it might help him process his fears. But the book contains disturbing imagery, and Samuel's behavior becomes even more violent, and strange sounds start coming from inside their house. The book keeps reappearing. After she throws it away probably should have been concerning. The entity feeds on Amelia's grief and exhaustion, growing stronger as she becomes more isolated and desperate. She starts seeing the Babadook everywhere. The creature possesses her completely, turning her into a violent monster who tries to kill Samuel with a kitchen knife while speaking in the Babadook's rasping voice. Samuel fights back against his possessed mother, tying her up and trying to comfort her while the entity screams through her mouth. Only when Amelia finally confronts her repressed grief over her husband's death can she banish the creature to their basement, where it must be fed regularly to stay contained. But the Babadook's true punishment wasn't what you think. It was forcing them to face their own mental demons. And finally, we reach the most twisted punishment in horror cinema history. Salo. 4 powerful libertines, a duke, bishop, magistrate, and president, control a fascist Italian republic during World War II. They kidnap 18 beautiful teenagers from good families and transport them to a remote villa where they plan to spend 4 months indulging their most evil desires. The teenagers think they're being relocated for their safety during wartime. Everything seems normal when they arrive at the luxurious villa. There are servants, elegant rooms, and formal dining areas. The libertines explain rules and schedules like it is some kind of exclusive boarding school. The teenagers aren't allowed to leave, guards patrol the grounds, and the libertines keep staring at them with predatory intensity. They're also required to be naked during certain hours. The libertines subject the teenagers to 4 months of escalating physical, sexual, and psychological torture. They force the victims to participate in degrading ceremonies, sexual slavery, and cannibalistic rituals, while professional storytellers narrate increasingly twisted fantasies. The teenagers are beaten, burned, and mutilated for the libertines' amusement. Guards torture anyone who shows resistance. The final punishment involves the execution of victims in a courtyard while the libertines watch through binoculars, taking turns describing each death in clinical detail. The film ends with the libertines dancing casually while their latest victims scream in the background, treating mass murder as just another form of entertainment. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every deserved death in Friday the 13th, click now.